I love wild missionary stories about angels, deliverances, the supernatural. The apostolic movement of God is a frontline, dangerous movement. And we live so secure, bundled up in our little Christmas huddles. I had to bring in the gritty third world in for today's show. For Christmas, I want to go to where the missionaries are on the front lines in the totalitarian countries, the communist countries, behind the Iron Curtain in China, in Korea, in the Middle East. And I got an expert group that's here. By the way, we have Next Level Spiritual Warfare. This is this month, seemingly very appropriate. LanceWallnau.com/next level, or call 1-800-910-6349 and get your gift for any amount. You can get a hold of this. For your gift of any amount, get a hold of the next level. What's the next level, Brother Wallnau? It's the level you're going into, and it isn't like the one you came out of. It's a whole different game right now. So Next Level Warfare, LanceWallnau.com/next level. And let's get into today's broadcast with two real generals on the front lines of the underground church. Well, you know, at my age, I'm dating myself now because I'm going to be turning 70. Can you believe that, Leland? 70 within a year. Well, here's the deal. I know all the generals. I mean, I know who they are. I've studied them. I've read their books. Or I've watched videos, or I've met many of them. And some of them are still alive. I'm talking about like the Pat Robertsons, the Oral Roberts, Billy Grahams. You can go back, beyond that. Lauren Cunningham and your relationship with Lauren is you his brother-in-law?
My mother and his mother were sisters.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the Cunninghams. All right, there you go. So your mother and his mother were sisters, and Youth with a Mission is one of those stories that is in the annals in heaven of great missionary movements. And this is a general, Leland Paris, who's been running the YWAM base there in Texas now for how long?
I'm a buck private.
Oh, yeah, buck private.
Yeah. Well, we've been in Texas for about 46 years this coming May.
46 years.
We got that property from David Wilkerson back in May of 1980. Mm-hmm.
All right, so let me go back. So we go to this place. This place was crazy. I'm up in, where was I? I was in Philadelphia. I was in Harrisburg, Lancaster County, and I'm reading about Last Days Evangelical Association, Keith Green. Many of my older folks remember Keith Green. David Wilkerson, Leonard Ravenhill, Georgian Banoff, and Youth with a Mission. What the heck was it in the water in that part of Texas that attracted all those powerful ministries to a place like that?
Well, David Wilkerson came to me back a year or two before I ever was interested in moving there, wanting me to come. He said, we need to have a hub of ministries here that can minister with each other and work out of here. And I was in California at that point, but then I got to praying and considering it, and it seemed like the Lord was telling me that I need to research. So I got on the phone with Lauren after researching. I said, 70% of our recruits around the world come from the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington, a few from the East Coast. And I said, we have this huge Bible Belt. In fact, where we are, it's the buckle of the Bible Belt, I guess, right, down in East Texas. They say down there you're either Southern Baptist or you've been tampered with. And so anyway, I said, I think as far as I'm always interested in recruiting more and more missionaries to work around the world with our mission, right, to fulfill the Great Commission. And so that was what stirred my interest to finally talk to David Wilkerson. And he said, well, I felt the Lord told me that this property is no longer mine. It now belongs to you. Will you take it? I said, well, give me a couple of days to pray about it. Everything in me was saying yes, yes, yes. But I came back and I said, well, I feel the Lord has spoken to us with a qualification that we accept it on the basis that I have the same posture you have, that if I'm walking on it and God says it's no longer yours, that we give it up to someone else. Oh, and so that's the posture I've tried to have all these years. And we've trained thousands of people that went through there over the last 40-something years, 46 years there. Yeah.
I'm so convicted. Ladies and gentlemen, when was the last time you've heard a testimony like that? I think I swim with sharks all the time. I don't know that disposition. First of all, you waited. You prayed about it. You didn't just say, I got a witness, I agree, amen, and grab it. Why did you wait?
Well, because I've always taught people for many years that you should do the next thing God tells you to do. And sometimes we're blaming God for everything that happens when he didn't really tell us. But we say the Lord said, or the Lord said this. And so I said, we need to back off and really wait on the Lord and see if it's really what he's wanting us to do. And so I felt in my spirit that there was a qualified yes.
I'm just pausing to say, I mean, I'm enjoying already this interview. I'll tell you why. When you got guys like this, they're like a gold mine. He calls himself a private, but the reality is, we're glad you're here. You're 87 years old, still sharp, still got a vision for things, still moving things. And the young man sitting next to you is Paul Snyder. Now, tell me about Paul.
Well, can I give you a little backstory before I answer your question?
Yeah, sure.
Lorne, before he passed away several years, felt that he was to get a Bible in every family's home around the world. So that was his passion. So I said, Lorne, I've been asking the Lord, what's my passion? Because I've been working in restricted nations for a number of years. And I said, I think my passion is the Great Commission, but it has to do with going into all the world and reaching everybody. Well, if you do that, it's going to be restricted nations, some of them highly restricted nations. And so we have to find ways of doing that. And so that's why I started this thing called Global Bridges, because we started working in depth in a lot of highly restricted nations, and trying to survive through that. And the Lord has blessed and helped, and there's been a lot of good work. And so Paul, my nephew, is
family.
Yeah.
This is great. I love it. The faith that was in Lois, your mother, is in Eunice and is in you, Timothy. I like the family lineage.
And his great uncle was the founder of New Tribes Missions. Years ago, before he was born.
How about that?
And before I was born.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's just been a lot of wonderful connections that takes place as we walk this journey.
So that sets it up for you, Paul. So your DNA is also to go to get the gospel. So if the passion is to get the gospel, the Great Commission everywhere, but particularly with an assignment on restricted nations, which translates to where the pure persecution is the highest. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting ministry, folks. That's not like me booking my tour around when it's cold in the north, I book going south. And when, you know what I mean? This is going where it's dangerous all the time, right?
Usually is, yeah.
I mean, how many, you don't have to say what countries, but how many trips into restricted nations have you made?
Well, one of those restricted nations has been 115 times. Another highly restricted nation, a very highly restricted nation, is 81 times in and out, and the Lord's kept us alive.
My gosh.
Yeah, but we've had a few interesting situations. I've been sometimes separated from everybody else around me, and put in a car by myself with a few people from their intelligence, trying to pierce into my mind. Wow. And so I'm praying silently back there, Lord, what do I say next here? So anyway, that's been some of our journey. Yeah.
I'll have to take some tips from you. I got shut down once in one of those restricted countries, and they put agents around us that were recording us, and one of them came up and asked us what we were doing. And my wife said, well, we were having a conference, and then they came in, and they just shut us down. I guess that's totalitarianism. We were just having a meeting. And the lady goes, no, they didn't just shut you. Just arguing with her. And I go, honey, I'm telling Adam, I go, honey, you're not talking to a tourist. These are agents everywhere. She goes, oh, I didn't know. Yeah. So we need to get some lessons on how to be a little more,
Maybe I could insert one more story here. This governor that I'd worked with for a number of years, we were feeding up to 72,000 meals per day in the peak of their starvation.
72,000 meals a day.
This governor, it was his time to retire, and we'd been meeting for about 13 years already. And it was his last meeting. In fact, it was about this time of year, almost Christmas time, December. And my friend that I work very closely with and myself were sitting on one side of the table. He was on the other. And the minders, the three minders, they take notes on everything he says and everything we say. For some reason, they got up to leave the room for a moment. When they did, he looked across the table and said, I just want you to know the Jesus I've heard about, I've seen in your lives. And that's one of those nations where you can't even talk about Jesus.
Wow.
And so I thought, boy, this is worth the whole thing, right? Just hearing him say that.
The Jesus I know. So somehow it got to him, it got into him, he got saved somehow. Who said you're supposed to be comfortable with your capacity? God didn't say, are you comfortable? He's actually there as the comforter. Why do you think the Holy Ghost is called the comforter? Because of how uncomfortable you're going to get when you start flowing in that which God has for you.
Lance Wallnau has spent decades teaching believers how to recognize spiritual battles most people never see. Because some resistance doesn't come from what you did wrong. It comes from what was never dealt with. Patterns that repeat and struggles that feel heavier than they should be. Pressure that seems to come from nowhere. Next Level Spiritual Warfare confronts the unseen forces that operate through bloodlines, agreements, and spiritual doors, and shows you how to shut them down.
Next Level Spiritual Warfare. The spiritual warfare that's going to be in your own mind saying, I can't do this, I can't do that, how am I going to do it? Because we're going up, we're going to deal with another level. Hear more accurately, and God will add more and more revelation to plunder your strong man's house.
This teaching was created to help you recognize what you're really fighting and to activate the spiritual authority to break it. You can receive the full message from Lance Wallnau today for your generous gift of any amount at lancewallnau.com/next level or by calling 800-910-6349. Take the next step in shutting down resistance and stepping fully into what God has prepared for you.
I'm looking down, Paul, because I realize I got 15 minutes and I'm just enjoying this. We may have to hold you guys over for a little longer. Tell me about, we talked about the restricted nations. Now, the bridges, what is it called?
Global bridges.
Global bridges. So what's the vision for global bridges? It's restricted nations or is it making a major push into the restricted nations?
Well, it's basically bringing compassion of Christ into the hardest places on earth, which are restricted nations. And to date, we've fed nearly 119 million meals in highly restricted nations. We've cared for more than 700 orphans, and we have mentored more than 3,000 and discipled 3,000 young people. And that's just kind of scratching the surface. There's a lot more that goes on. There's been a lot of church planting. We know about 7,000 churches that have sprung up, underground churches that have sprung up from our work in certain nations. And just a little bit of my background, I started a very successful online program. It was ranked number 7 in the nation for best online Christian colleges. So the Lord really used my wife and I in education, and we both grew up in missions. My parents, talking about restricted nations, my parents were in YWAM back in 1969 and 70. They were in the first school of evangelism with YWAM, and back then they were smuggling Bibles behind the Iron Curtain with Brother Andrew. And Leland, Uncle Leland is my wife's uncle, so I'm his nephew-in-law.
Oh, wow.
But he also was working with Brother Andrew back at that time. And so it's kind of amazing how our families kind of have been intertwined for all these years, and the Lord has just kind of brought us together in this, and it's something that he's just been putting together, and it's like a family calling in some way. I don't know how to explain that, but it's there. So
well, it's clearly generational. It's in the DNA. It's something for the nations. It's an apostolic call of some sort. So you're, but then you have during, obviously before we went and we're recording here, I wanted to catch up. I haven't seen Leland I can't believe that I haven't seen you in so long. But you're one of those people that I've never forgot you. Once I met you, once I saw you, once I was with you. But we're talking about individuals, because you must get to the place where individual stories. We're so removed from this particular aspect of Christianity. But what do you do when you're comforting someone who has pastors that are in prison? What do you say when you've got a government? How do you pray when a government is locking up pastors. I mean, in America, we have not been tested to that point. And the way we are so mouthy and rebellious, I wonder how we would handle government locking up pastors. But some of these countries, it's normative now, and it's getting weirder. It's going towards hate speech laws, restrictive speech in Canada, in England. And but what do you say to people when you hear, oh, our pastor's been locked up? What's your counsel?
Well, I know Brother Andrew used to say to us when I was a very young man, he said, so they catch you and they put you in prison. Don't you think God needs missionaries in prison? So that's maybe a lighter, glib way of saying it. But the truth of the matter is, you look in depth, yes, there's missionaries needed everywhere. And why not in the prison? But now I've never been in prison, thank God. But I know at the same time, I have a lot of brothers and sisters that I pray for that are suffering really in depth at this point in time. But because prison's not the place we look forward to being. No. In fact, a lady we've worked very closely with over the years that has spent a good part of her life in prison, all because of her faith. Simply, and one of those prison terms was a death sentence. And then later, working through her sister, I found out that they said, well, we could lighten the sentence to a life sentence if she paid a $100,000 fine. Well, it was a ransom. And so I'll just tell this quick story. I'll try to make it quick.
No, don't make it quick.
I raised $100,000.
Wow.
And I wrote some letters. And now my humor, I've got a weird sense of humor. My humor is I'm always soft on the ladies, because I was always taught as a young man,
right,
the ladies are sugar and spice and everything nice.
Right.
And so I was expecting them to have sweet retort. But I had 2 letters from 2 ladies saying, let her go to prison or let her be a martyr. And my reaction was, let you be a martyr.
Right.
So we raised that money, and then they lightened her sentence to where 10 and a half months later she got out. But they'd almost starved her to death. She was weighing about 70 pounds when she got out of prison. And but so these are some of the stories we've had. But this lady has started over 7,000 house churches alone in that nation.
Wow.
And she just doesn't give up.
Well, there's the other part of it. She started over 7,000 house church. Dear.
Well, when she has been in prison, it's been clear that the Lord has sent her there because she wins just about everybody in the prison to the Lord. It's amazing how God uses her that way. But if I can follow up on that question, I would suggest that the mercy of God is what allows the suffering, because there's this little passage in Genesis 15 in the area where it's talking about Abraham, when God's making this covenant with Abraham, and he says that your people will go into slavery for 400 years. There's a little verse that says, until the iniquity of the Amorites is complete. And what God was saying there was, I am so merciful and long-suffering that I'm giving the Amorites 400 years to repent until you come in and dispossess them. And in the meantime, you're in slavery in Egypt. I think, being a witness to the Egyptians.
Right.
And I think that that's a perspective that we in the West don't have.
Interesting.
The goodness of God is God gives everybody a choice, and people have a free will to persecute people or not. And when you've got believers in countries that are restricted, like we're talking about, that are being persecuted, God is giving, it's his mercy that's allowing the people persecuting them time to repent.
What you have is a reminder of what Jesus came as a missionary into planet Earth, a hostile territory, which the jungle people would eventually kill the native, the missionaries sent to the island, and they would kill him. But it was all part of God's foreknowledge and his plan. I did an interview with Charlie Kirk, which got about 2 million views after his death. It was where I was kind of like pushing back on him, because he and I were talking, and he said he wanted to, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he wants to raise 1,000 Dietrich Bonhoeffers.
Oh.
I said, honestly, Charlie, why don't you just say 1,000 Martin Luthers? At least Luther lived. Bonhoeffer, was martyred. He said, no. He said, I know, but life is but a vapor. Even if you live long, it's short. The quality of your life is what matters.
Oh,
what a statement!
wonderful.
He says, Bonhoeffer's the witness I want to raise up 1,000 people willing to die young, basically.
Yeah.
Man, that was in him. You've got people that are willing to go back into communist, into totalitarian, into probably Muslim areas where after they get saved, what possesses someone to want to go back to that? It's got to be Jesus, huh?
That's right. Well, the Apostle John was the only apostle that historians say was not martyred. He came close to martyrdom at one point, but then he was exiled to Patmos for a while. He went through a lot of persecution. But at the end of his life, they say that he lived to be maybe 96, 7, 8, or maybe 100 years old. And he was too frail to go to church, so the young men would carry him to the church service. And his few words he would give, they say, was, love the people, love everybody. He was the love apostle. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's all about. All the others did go through martyrdom. But here he is. It's loving the people. God so loves the world. And that's what it's about.
Well, you've got this Global Bridges. Tell us what we need to know about this assignment, because you're here to share with us what you're doing. And by the way, is it globalbridgesrelief.org?
Yes, that's right.
So we'll have that up as a lower third. Be the bridge, globalbridgesrelief.org. If while we're talking, the Lord is touching your heart and he's moving upon your spirit, it's a sign that he wants you to put an investment in, a seed into touching some of these nations and souls in other nations. Talk to me about what you're doing with Global Bridges.
Well, one of the things that we're doing right now is we're trying to increase the fundraising because it's very challenging when you're working in these nations. Just let me give you some stats, okay? So when you're working in the 1040 window, which are the nations that have been the least impacted by the gospel, out of every $100 that goes in the offering, this is the church at large, okay? Out of every $100, $95 stays in the church, $4.50 goes toward missions in nations that have already had the gospel, and 50 cents goes to the 1040 window that has not had the gospel. And one of the reasons for that is because we can't really talk publicly about a lot of what we do. Like, we can't give you details on the air right now about a lot of what we do. It just would be too dangerous.
I know what that's like. You can't talk about what you do.
It'd be too dangerous.
You can't take pictures. You don't do selfies.
So it does make it difficult to raise funds, for very important work.
Yeah.
And so if there's anybody out there who would like to have me or one of our team come and share in their church, we can share more details privately in smaller groups, and we can share with the entire church, just so long as we don't put anything that's too sensitive on the air. So.
Yeah. It's hard to do.
It's hard.
I remember one time, I would do the corporate invading Babylon is what I called it. I'd go into corporate worlds as a Christian, but I had a training program, and of course I wanted to get inside and then be a witness.
Yeah.
And I remember going all the way to Indonesia and having a boardroom of 7 Muslim guys and 1 Christian CEO that ran these corporations. And I share with them about we were talking about principles and values and how they were going to work and what kind of work we do with consulting. And a guy says, "Hey, we've seen your videos and we've already watched on YouTube what you do when you go into foreign nations in order to go covert. So we already know what you're up to. Our boss is a Christian. We get it. So just go ahead and tell us what you want to do." And I thought, it's going to be hard in the age of digital material to be able to do much. So even going into a church, all it takes is one cell phone like this, recording it, and you can't make people stop, and then they put it on the internet, and then it goes into somebody else. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Just go to the website and fill out the contact form, or you can email us.
And that's on Global Bridges?
globalbridgesrelief.org. Yeah.
Folks, they're really behind. I mean, I know these guys. This is the legitimate front lines of underground missionary work. You've had since 1998 118 million meals served. Do they know that it's a Christian? Do a lot of them know that Christians are behind it?
Well, that governor that we didn't talk about Jesus, but he knew we were Christians.
Right.
But no, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. Because it's kind of hard to have
Yeah.
118 million people say, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
Which is, but 700 orphans cared for. How do you do that? I mean, through you're funding houses that actually have the orphans.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're Christians running the houses?
Yes, they are. And the gospel is being preached. The gospel is being preached. In some nations, what we're doing is we're really preparing the ground for the gospel, but we're at the same time, we're helping defectors and things like that. So,
Wow.
And some of the feeding programs we've done, like in Africa, we have some people that go in there and they'll do an aquaponics farm, and over 2 or 3 acres, they can raise enough food to feed maybe 2,000 people. And so that's some of the things we're doing in different African nations. And Africa is one of those big challenging places for us to go to nowadays as well.
It totally is.
Yeah.
Let me just read to you guys what we've got here. Wow. 2,300 young people mentored through programs in spiritually restricted regions. How do you communicate with people in a spiritually restricted region?
you do it in secretive locations.
Yeah.
Oh, you do it in small groups.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not online.
No.
Yeah. Well, in Youth with a Mission, I don't mean just as bragging, but in 1974, I told Lauren we need a program and that disciples people. And so that's when we had the discipleship training school began in 1974. They say over 1 million people have gone through that nowadays. Well, some of these restricted nations have asked us, can we do DTSs in those nations?
Sure.
And I said, yeah, we won't call it YWAM. We'll just say it's a DTS. And so they use that as a means of training up. And some of these young people will ride on a train for several days trying to get to that place that's set up for it. And they're as poor as they could be, but they have a hunger to hear the gospel. And then some of those go out and become founders of underground churches. And so that's some of it.
Folks, listen, this is what I'm going to challenge you to do. Today, I want you to put hope into an act and sow into globalbridgesrelief.org. And you guys are in Plano, Texas?
At the Hope Center, yeah.
Well, Hope Center, we have an office there. Yeah.
You have an office there. All right. Well, this has been a powerful program. I want to thank you for being with me. We'll have to do some more because there's more. I could feel a lot of thoughts are in the atmosphere here. We're going to get some great viewer mail. But Leland, do you have any? You have a book, haven't you? Written a book?
We've written a book. It's ready to publish. Actually, he's a gifted writer. I would record it. I'm driving down the road, the stories.
All right. When your book is ready, we'll do a part 2.
Okay.
Going to have you come back and we'll share your book.
And it's a lot of history, a lot of stories about Brother Andrew, Duncan Campbell.
Yeah. People
that I got to know back 50, 60 years ago that impacted my life, that put me on the course that I'm on.
I love it. And
yeah.
I'm telling you, these are the stories. There's an impartation, though, that comes from the people that have been living it. So bring hope and a future into the hardest places in the earth. Great time to do that at Christmas. Great time to do it starting the year off. You sow into reaching the unreached, and God will sow into reaching the unreached in your family. GlobalBridgesRelief.org. Thank you, Leland Paris and Paul Snyder. God bless you.
Thank you, Lance.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again tomorrow. God bless.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world